Hello and welcome to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney, and you have found the place where we talk about estate planning, elder law, real estate, and business law. So give us a call, why don't you? I mean, how hard can it be? How hard? I ask you, how hard can it be? 616-774-2424. That's the number to call. 616-774-2424. If you have a question, a comment, or a concern about wills, trusts, or probate, long-term care, if you're thinking about buying or selling, who knows? You know, is the bloom off the rose as far as the real estate market goes? Suggesting to say, Magic 8 Ball says, how the hell do I know? We're in confusing times. There's no question about it. So looks like prices are going down as interest rates go up. That's kind of a historical pattern. We're finally starting to see a little bit of that. But you know, like I say, who knows? Are the people who bought properties in the mad scramble? Well, it was this year, wasn't it? Just a few months ago. Are they going to regret that, or are the low interest rates going to make them happy for the next 30 years? Your guess is as good as mine. Also, if you're looking to buy or sell a business, if you're looking to keep that business humming like a top, again, 616-774-2424. All kinds of great ideas for you if you are running a business. After all, you are the backbone of America, right? I think it was Mark Twain who said that there's no one more valuable than the self-made man. Now, I understand he was writing back in the 1800s, but anyway, no one more valuable than the self-made man, and no one who is more convinced of it, or no one who'll tell you as quickly, or something like that. It's a Mark Twain thing. You get it. Anyway, if you are that person, if you're the one running the business, yeah, you're pretty valuable. And if you have a question about how to keep that thing going, well, give us a call, 616-774-2424. We got two or three things popping. People putting a lot of do-re-mi behind advertising. A couple of legal strategies, put it that way. And the one I want to talk about is the employee retention tax credit. All right, let's all go back to sleep on that one. I don't blame you. We did write a column about this back in the day when they first came out with it, urging business owners to take advantage of this. If you're a business owner with employees, mind you, and this is one of those COVID shovel the money out the door quickly as you can programs that they didn't. I don't want to say didn't think through. I guess they thought it through, but anyway, most of the money is still on the table. You know, a lot of people. It's unfortunate that a lot of folks think that this is not available anymore. It's a thing if you're running a business and you have employees, okay, or if you work for a business with employees and you have the owner's ear, perhaps. And this is not just for-profit businesses either. This is if you have a church or a nonprofit or anything like that, this money is still available. And what it is, and I'm just going to give you the bare bones, and we can get into it. And if you give me a call at 616-774-2424, I'm more than happy to get into all the ins and outs and the nuances, and because there's a lot of them. I mean, who's surprised? It's the IRS running the show, so obviously things are going to be not quite as clear, not as easy as I describe. But it's like anything else with the IRS. You know, the devil's in the details. They can give you a deduction or a credit, and that's what this is, a tax credit. They can give it to you, but if you don't document it every step along the way to indicate that you're justified in taking it, then it's a problem. But you know what? This is a very difficult thing. I know so many folks, and understand we don't do tax returns or whatever, but we do get called in occasionally to review tax consequences of a transaction, that kind of thing. And so often, the strategies that are available, I've even given up talking about it, but the tax strategies that are available, people are like, oh, I'm not comfortable with it. It's like when you figure this stuff out, when you get the information, whether it's from the business or the individual client, these are generally speaking business type deductions, but you get the information and you're like, okay, you're entitled to a tax deduction of X amount of dollars, whatever it is. And then folks are like, oh, I can't take that deduction. I'm not comfortable. Or you get attorneys saying that. That's the worst. Or CPA saying it. It's like, I'm not comfortable. I've heard that with regard to this tax credit I'm about to tell you about. People are like, oh, I'm not comfortable. Well, did you read the law? Well, no, I'm just not comfortable. Did you read the regulations? No, still not comfortable. Did you did you do any research? See, the way the tax code works, the way government works, and I'm not the first to say this or the first to observe it, is that it tends to serve the people who pay for the politicians. Okay? They say that the best investment that any business owner can make, the best investment, is in politics. You hate to say it. You think, oh, wait a second, land of the free, home of the brave. I get that part. I'm on board with that. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes down to legislation, money talks and BS walks. Okay? So, and lobbying for different regulations and this and that, it all takes money. So many times the laws that we get were written largely by the lobbyists, given to the legislators, who then make some changes, or they don't make the changes, obviously. It's their staff, people that make the changes. And what is a career path what do you think the career path for a government staffer? If you're working for a politician, if you're working, I'm not saying agencies too, actually, but if you're working for a politician, okay, and your politician might get voted out, that happens, doesn't it? And now they're talking about decreasing the term limits, maximum 12 years and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to change anything. What it will do is it'll put more pressure, right? See, if you don't have think about this with the term limits, and I know people love term limits, and fine, there's arguments on both sides. But here's the thing with term limits. You don't have 20 years. You don't have a long period of time. You can't kind of, have a long-term influence with the term limits. And what it does is it just ups the price of buying the politician for the 12 years that you've got and feathering their nest later on. And you say, oh, we'll stop that. Oh, that won't happen. We'll put in restrictions. Oh, you can't go to work for... Oh, give me a break. You think they're not going to figure out 23... You think they haven't already figured out 23 ways around that? Okay? All it does is it ups the ante so that small business have it more difficult to buy politicians. And the rich people who have been buying them right along, it eliminates the company because it raises the price. You see? This term limit stuff, it's like, okay, I get, oh, then they won't be in there forever. Yeah, I get it. And there's, I understand a lot of people persuaded by it. Okay, fine. But if you don't think politicians are for sale, I got a bridge I'd like to sell you. It's in Brooklyn. Really nice. Made out of steel and everything else. You want to buy the Brooklyn Bridge? Yeah, I got it for sale. No problem. Anyway, the point is that the laws are written for people who have money because they buy the laws. Okay? I'm not saying 100% of the time, but I'm saying that's generally the flow of it. Okay? So what if you could take advantage, unbelievable miracle, take advantage of some of that? That's what I'm talking about. It's the law. It's the way it's written. It's the way it is. Now, can you take advantage of that as a middle-class person? And the answer in some cases is yes, what we're going to talk about is one of those examples when we get back. Unless you call me at 616-774-2424. I'm David Carrier, your family's realistic personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. We're talking about laws and taxes and all the rest of this stuff. And the fact of the matter is that, golden rule, right? Whoever has the gold makes the rules. That's a reality. Now, the question is, are they the only ones who can benefit from it? Because the problem that I see with regular folks taking advantage of some of the things, I mean business owners, if you're running your small business, what have you, there's all kinds of stuff out there that your CPA is tired of telling you about, and if they ever knew it, and they can't convince you to do it, so you never hear about it. All right. There's a big one that I'm working my way slowly but steadily. I'll get there. And that's the employee retention credit, the employee retention tax credit. If you've heard about this, you may have gotten an email on it. There's promoters are out there pushing on this stuff, and over promising. I hear some of them want 30% of the tax credit to do the preparation. 10% seems pretty reasonable to me, but it's up to you. The problem, though, with it, as with so many other things where regular folks are going to get a benefit from the government, the problem is it's too good to be true. The idea that you would get anything, any kind of payback on the taxes you paid in is just couldn't happen. No. And the advisors that are serving you have largely the same, I don't know what you call it, impression or prejudice, bias, weakness, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, deficiency, is they think the same thing. And the point is that when they make the rules, when you follow the rules, you get the benefit. This is what wealthy people have been doing steadily since we've had a government. Since anybody's been governed by anybody, right? I mean, this is not an American thing. This is a human being thing, right? It's to take advantage, and it's in the interests, I think, of the wealthy to convince you that there's no seat at the table for you when there is. All you have to do is the same thing that they're doing, which is documentation and all the rest. Now, faithful listeners know that my perceived main function in this world is making sure that middle-class people don't go broke because of long-term care. Right? Understanding that the way America pays for long-term care is with a government program. Just like Social Security is a government program, just like Medicare is a government program, there's a government program called Medicaid. Ooh, scary word. Medicaid is the government program that pays for long-term care. You don't have to go broke to get Social Security. You don't have to go broke to get Medicare. And you don't have to go broke to get Medicaid either. Okay? These are all government programs paid for by your tax dollars. Now, they want you to go broke. I understand that. But just like with taxes, would they want you to pay more in taxes or less? Well, if you don't think the answer is more, wake up and smell the coffee. Okay? So, who takes advantage of these tax breaks? Typically wealthy people. Typically people with advisors who've actually read the law. You got to read the law, and then you got to follow the law. Okay? But it is not too good to be true. It's just the law. You just read it, you follow it, you get the benefit. That's how it works. This is how the wealthy they're not getting away with anything. If anything, you'd say that the problem is in the writing of the law. That's a problem. Okay? I mean, how does that come about? What is the policy? That's an issue. Fair enough. So do term limits or whatever it is you're going to do to address that issue. I don't know how you do it effectively. I don't think it's been discovered in the history of the world, where you have a government that isn't for the benefit of the people most interested in the government. I mean, it's just human beings. Leave that aside. The fact of the matter is that in feathering their nest, they've also left a few feathers for you if you choose to pick them up. Here's what I'm talking about immediately, right now, is the employee retention tax credit. This was a government program, a tax credit. So if you run a business, you need to listen to this, okay? If you run a business with employees, not including yourself or your family. It's yourself or your family, forget about it, But only yourself and your family. If you have employees, W-2 employees, not 1099 subcontractor type employees, real employees where you have to pay the FICA and the FUTA and the health care and every other damn thing that you pay for your employees, and you got to pay taxes, all those taxes for the privilege of paying other people to do a job for you. So if you have employees, right, and you did in 2019, 20, and 21, you're the easy case. Now, there's all kinds of other stuff going on, but that's the easy case, right? And what is possible if you have the right documentation, and we're talking payroll records and profit and loss statements and the usual books and records that you keep, it is possible to get a tax credit of $5,000 in 2020 and $21,000 up to $21,000 in 2021. That's $26,000 per employee. Now, I didn't stop talking when I said that, okay? What I've also said, and I am saying right now, again, you have to qualify quarter by quarter. You have to get the paperwork right. Right now, okay, there are some people, right, smarty pants, right, who forged bank records and profit and loss statements, and they put in for this, and they got millions of dollars from the government through fraud, through forgery. And they're prosecuting the hell out of those people. Well, God bless them. If that's how you're going to do it, you deserve to go to jail. Club fed, but still, it's jail, right? And you deserve to lose your Lamborghini, your Ferrari, and all the rest of the stuff that you got by fraudulently filling out the paperwork. But, as we'll talk about in the next segment, they rushed this thing out so quickly that if you're honest, make a good faith effort, right, to do this, it's 26 G's per employee. 26,000. How many employees you got? 5? That's $100,000. Pay 10% to one of these people who do it for you, and now you get $90,000, which is taxable income. Yeah. It's not free money. It's not like the Paycheck Protection Program, which was just, hey, let's dump money out of the sky. It's a little bit different. It's targeted to people with employees. But when we get back, we'll go over just exactly how this all works and why you should be at least looking into it. Please. You're listening to The David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's tax code scouring personal attorney. Welcome back to The David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. We're doing Andrews Sisters. In case you hadn't recognized the bumper music, we're doing Andrews Sisters stuff from World War II. Hopefully we'll get to rum and Coca-Cola before you know it. Got a caller in the meantime. Mom has a cottage or house or what have you, 5 children, and what they've done is I don't say unforgivable sin, but what they've done is the very common and disastrous strategy of putting all the kids on the deed. Okay? How does this make any sense at all? Now, I will cheerfully admit that it's the cheapest thing you can possibly do. Okay? It will avoid probate, typically. Not always, but typically. It will avoid probate. So you got that going for it, right? It avoids probate, hurrah, and it's the cheapest thing you can possibly do. But the consequences of it, it's like, well, why don't you make your car bumpers out of paper mache, right? You remember what paper mache is. All right? I mean, it's for what end? For what purpose are you doing this? And people say, oh, I want to make sure the kids get the cottage. Hey, listen, if you want to fractionate not only your own kids, but the grandkids, and get the cousins feuding at each other, boy, this is a great way to do it. Because first of all, are the negative consequences to mom. Let's assume that mom is of a certain age where she's looking at the span of days and thinking, the clock's ticking down here. Maybe I should do something about the house. My friend from the hairdresser, she told me that putting all the kids on the deed was great. It just works wonderful. I'm going to do that, okay? So let's say that happens, and then mom needs long-term care in the next 5 years. Well, now I got to go around, scurry around to all the 5 kids and get them to deed back their interests. And maybe one of them got divorced and there's a lien on the property now from the other one. Or maybe, I don't know. I mean, there are so many ways to encumber this property because mom, think about this. If you're in your 70s and 80s, right? 70s, 80s, right? There are certain risks that you face. All right, certain risks that you face when you're in your 70s and 80s. Well, if you crank the clock back 30 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, when you had your kids, right? So now your kids are not in their 70s and 80s. Your kids are in their 40s and 50s, okay? You just multiply, and they have different risks. See, that's my point, right? You're running a lot more risks at 40 and 50 than you are at 70 and 80 in terms of life risks, in terms of being married and having kids and student loans and having to have a car and signing off on things and on and on. It's a different risk profile, okay? And by the time you're 70, 80s, you finally made it a little bit, one hopes, into sort of the safe harbor, right? You're not on the bounding main anymore. You've made it to a safe place. Okay? Your kids are still out there in the ocean, floating around, and 5 of them in this case. Thank you, Steve, for sending this in. Right? You got 5 of them out there doing their thing, and now you've exposed your home, your safe place, your safe harbor. You've exposed that to the risks of all 5. So it's not just that you're taking risks that you grew out of. Yeah, you're doing that. You're doing that. But you're also multiplying those risks times 5. One for, each kid. You want to explain how that makes any sense? I'm all ears. But it doesn't make any sense, and most people aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about saving a couple $1,000 or however much it is. Oh, I'm not going to get that done. Oh, those rotten lawyers, right? I'm going to do this because somebody else did it, and it, got their law degree from the back of the cereal box, Cracker Jacks or whatever. It must be good. Oh, it worked for them. Really? Okay, fine. But that's why people do it. It's cheap. I get that. I certainly understand the value of $1 and wanting to do things inexpensively. But the first thing you've done is expose yourself. Now you've got 5 years where you're out of control, where if you need long-term care, you're not in control. Okay, and I'm talking the typical joint tenants with rights of survivorship deed. I'm talking the typical tenants in common deed that folks do, or joint deed, that they do with their kids. Now, there's another deed which limits the risk called the transfer on death or ladybird deed, enhanced life estate deed, okay? That one, you don't have the risk, but that's not what most people are doing anyway, okay? I mean, attorneys will steer you down that, give you a bum steer down that path, but most of what we see regular folks just doing on their own, what they're doing is the typical, is the regular deed. Okay, fine. So if you need long-term care in the meantime, you're going to get denied long-term care until you get all the kids to sign back the house. What if they don't? What if they can't? What if they're going through bankruptcy? What if there was a divorce? What if there's a lien? On and on and on. Okay? You're all out of control. Now, let's assume it works perfectly. Perfectly. Oh, this works so great. And now mom has died, and the 5 kids own it together. Well, there's 2 ways of that happening. One is the last man standing, which is what most people do. Most people do, whoever lives the longest gets the house or the cottage or the land or whatever else. All right, it's joint tenants with rights of survivorship, or it's simply joint tenants, one or the other. Now, everyone's got a sibling, right, who tends to not take out the garbage, doesn't wipe down the counters, leaves the dirty dishes in the dishwasher, right? I mean, if you've got multiple siblings, you got one of those. Everybody does. Or, a friend of theirs, maybe. So here's the problem. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that after you get the house, everyone's got to pay taxes on it, right? Just annual property taxes got to be paid. There's annual, you got to pay for the insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And then you got to decide who's going to use it when and all the rest of that. I mean, that's all, none of that has been decided, which is now people are at each other's throat. Even if everyone maintained it well and everyone chips in cheerfully, who gets the 4th of July? Well, you had Labor Day last year. Yeah, well, you had Memorial Day 3 years in a row. Yeah, well, you didn't. Well, you're never around anyway. You could rent a house just as easy. Well, who needs it? Okay, but that's what you've done. My God. And no rules. It's like that steakhouse. No rules, just right. Well, it's more like no rules, just disaster when you're doing it this way. Also, we got the kid who doesn't want to pay the taxes. We got the kid who brings the biker gang out to the lake, 30 members. Guess what? They can do that. They don't have to pay the taxes. They don't have to pay the utilities. They don't have to upkeep it, all right? They own it just as much as you own it. You poor slob, who's paying all the taxes and doing the, hey, let's put the dock in. No, just let me know when it's in, and then we'll tie up, okay? The freeloader, Freddie the freeloader. They're out there, and you've got 1 or 2 of them in your family. It only takes 1 or 2, okay? Now, most of the time, thank God, they don't realize that that's their legal rights. But sometimes, guess what? They do realize what their legal rights are. They have no obligation to pay the taxes, utilities, upkeep, any of it. They can go out whenever they damn well please, and they can bring however many guests they choose, subject to noise and occupancy limitations imposed by the township. Okay? So that's what you're getting into with this, put everybody on the deed. It's insanity. And now everybody hates each other. And then finally you go to sell it, right? So we've got the cottage, and let's say it's $500,000, so $100,000 each for each one of the kiddies there, or make it $250 if that makes you feel better. So each one's going to get $50,000. Are you with me on this? You're going to sell it for $250. Everybody finally agrees, yeah, we all hate each other, and we just want the money. Let's get out of this. And then you got the brother who moved to California, moved to Beverly, and he's not satisfied with 50. He wants 100. And if he doesn't get his 100, he doesn't sign off. Are you with me on this? So if the other kids don't each kick in, $12,500, if they don't kick in to bring him up to the 100,000 he must have, nobody gets anything out of it. And so now he's got you over a barrel. You're at the mercy of the most ruthless kid when you do it this way. Again, insanity. Plus, if somebody dies, your grandkids don't get it, their share from that parent, depending on how you set it up. Okay? So give me a call, 616-774-2424, if you still think that this is a good idea. Disaster. Potential. Now, I'm not saying it never works. I'm just saying you have no reason for thinking that it will. You've been listening to The David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to The David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Time for you to give us a call at 616-774-2424. That's area code 616-774-2424. Now, let me wrap up with the, now that we've banished the demon of the quitclaim deed, I can't tell you just how many times over the last 32 years People have been bitterly regretting this will be good. Saves and typically, it's not the parent, because it's the kids who pay the price later on. Even with the ladybird deed, when you leave it to multiple kids, now you got to get everybody to sign off on the thing. And it was worse. It used to be worse because we had the Married Women's Property Act, which has been repealed now because anyone, it protected the wife, the married woman in a marriage. So it wasn't just the kid who had to sign off. You had to have the wife sign off as well. Well, when it's not just men and women getting married, it's men and men, women and women, right? So who's the person protected by the Married Women's Property Act? And they say, well, let's just ditch that thing. So now it's just the kid who has to sign off. So that's better. But back in the day, people were doing these when it wasn't only the child, it was also their spouse. And I say spouse because for a while there we thought men would have to sign off as well, but equal protection and all that. But then they said, no, that's okay, just the women. So, okay. So if you have a daughter-in-law, it's not just your kids who have to sign off, it's also your daughters-in-law. So it wasn't just 5 who had to agree, it'd be like up to 10. Good luck satisfying everybody, So anyway, it's still a terrible idea. It just used to be even worse. That's all I'm saying about that. Anyway, that's why you want to. That's why you want to be really careful about these. You don't want to be careful. You just don't do it. Don't do it. And I've heard probate judges say, where we get them in a state that's dragging on and on. They're like, well, why don't you just deed the property out to everybody and then be done with it? Then you can close the case. Well, true. Then you can close the probate case. You deed out the property to everybody. But now you got no control at all. You've got no priority. You've got no way of making sure that this thing goes smoothly. Oh my God, it's a disaster over and over again. I'm not saying every single time. I'm not saying that. But you buckle up before you get behind or after you get behind the wheel, right? I mean, before you go out on the road, you buckle up. You got a car with airbags. Right? It's not like my old Chevys with the steel dashboard. Come on. We're not that dumb anymore. Well, that's just don't do it. There's nothing good. You get nothing out of it, but you save a few bucks. And you, in the long run, it's much more expensive. It's just much more expensive. Okay. Let me wrap up with the ERTC, the Employee Retention Tax Credit. Here's the deal: if you had somebody, and this is where people get really wrapped around the axle, where they think they're not entitled to it when they actually are. And your CPA has said, "Oh, we got everything you're entitled to," and your tax advisor, "Oh, we got everything," or "Oh, you don't get it because you got the PPP," or "You don't get this tax credit." Because your revenue was actually up, right? You developed some new lines of business and now your revenue is up, so you don't qualify. None of that is true. None of that is true. Okay? I mean, it isn't. It just isn't true. That's not how the law is written. If you had a reduction in 2019, right? You take the 2019 revenue, compare 2020 and 2021 quarter by quarter, each quarter for second, third quarter, fourth quarter to the same quarter in 2019, right? And if you had drops in revenue, that's one way to qualify. Yeah. So if you were doing less business in 2020, 2021 during the COVID time, right, which as our president assures us, the pandemic is over. Yeah, walk that sucker back. Anyway, your revenue is down, then you qualify. Okay, then you qualify. Now, the problem, right? The problem is people think that that's the only way to qualify. You also qualify if your business, right, if you had a full or partial suspension of your business. Well, who the heck didn't have a full or partial suspension of a portion of their business, right? It doesn't have to be the whole thing, right? Let's say you're a restaurant and you can't do sit-down service. Well, you lost a portion of your business. It had to be suspended during the COVID. What if you're a property management company? You can't evict people. Okay, there's another line of business that now you can't not do. All right. So this is the thing with the law that people just completely blow off, and you don't have to satisfy both. You only have to satisfy one. Now the IRS did come out with a lot of guidance and stuff. All this guidance, that they're going to give us, right? On it's got to be 10% and on and on and on. Well, the courts have been throwing that stuff out left and right. All this explanation. Now we comply with the explanation. You want to comply with it because why not, right? It's not that hard. But you got to understand that the courts, there's a way that the government has to issue rules. It's called the Administrative Procedures Act, okay? And none of this stuff was done in compliance with the Administrative Procedures Act. Also, there's no enabling. Typically, when you do a tax law or any other law, you say, and the agency is authorized to issue regulations. Well, there was no such authorization in this tax credit, in the ERC, none. So there's no authority to issue regulations, and even if there was, they didn't comply with all the other rules that have to do with issuing rules. Okay, this is just sort of, hey, here's what we're thinking, and we're gonna throw it out the door. Well, when it comes time, to say, hey, did you comply? Didn't you comply? Right? There've been some actions where they said, hey, looking for judgments in advance, and they've said, no, you don't have to comply with that. It wasn't issued in conformance with the law. You can't be held to it. Okay. Now, heaven forbid, right? Heaven forbid that you would have to comply with what Congress wrote. Do you see? You have to comply with what Congress wrote. Absolutely you do. That's the law. But all this interpretation of the law by the IRS, right? Now, usually, regulations have the force of law. That's usually the way it is, but not with the ERTC, because they didn't issue the regulations the way they have to issue sauce for the goose, sauce for the gander, right? If I have to comply with the rules, so do they, right? That's how you have a binding effect on regulations, because they were issued in conformance with the administrative. Well, they didn't even try. They will frequently asked questions. Here's a notice. They didn't even call it a revenue ruling or anything else. It's a notice or a revenue procedure. No, they didn't do any of that. Right? They just said, here's what we're thinking. And what they're thinking is no part of the law. Okay? And that's what the courts have been that's what they've been finding. So, if you have a business with employees, even if you've been told by your CPA or whoever, you don't qualify. Even if you think, hey, I don't qualify, we were an essential business, or we got the PPP, or that is not accurate. Okay, you need to take a second look. Now, if you already maxed it out, God bless you. Good, I hope so. But if you didn't, and we got recession and inflation and all the rest of this going on, I would think that would be some use in keeping your business going in these hard times. And that was the point of the law. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Hello and welcome to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney, and you have found the place where we talk about estate planning, elder law, real estate, and business law. So give us a call, why don't you? 774-2424. It's area code 616-774-2424. We'll get your question, comment, or concern on the air. It's easy to do. And of course, it's, you can't, there's no more long distance anyway. So, we are live. And so you can call us. There you go. Let's see. What do we deal with around here, huh? One of the things that is coming up, it's one of those COVID hangover things. We got the President Joe Biden is saying that the pandemic is over, which I think, of course, immediately like with half the things well, more than half probably, things he says, they walk it right back. Oh, no, it's not over yet. And of course, in Michigan, we still have an emergency, a medical emergency. Governor doesn't want to give up those powers just yet. No, thank you. We need the power. And let's see. Oh, we've got John on the line. He's interrupting my rant. Oh, good. Maybe we'll be more calm when we get back. Hello, John. Welcome to the David Carrier Show.
Hello, David. First of all, I want to thank you for your show. It's been very interesting, and I try to listen as much as I can on it.
Well, thank you.
But today I have a question about real estate. I recently bought this property, and I've been here for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a little modest home on 2.5 acres. And it's a long, narrow 2.5 acres. And recently, I learned that they put the property behind me for sale. And I was not aware when I bought the place that there's an easement in place. And just wondering, should that have shown up on the title search? Because
Absolutely.
I went to a realty company, and the title company, is a rather large one, and so I would have thought that, and I would have been made aware of that when I signed the papers on it, but I was not. And hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
And okay, yeah, I guess I got a beep on my phone. Somebody's trying to get a hold of me. But anyway, so that's my question. And the property behind me is also long and narrow and about the same acreage. So it would make my property more valuable if I did buy it. But right now, I don't know if I'm comfortable of committing to that. And so
is it an access easement? Question, is that what it is?
Yeah,
right away or
really
60?
Narrow.
Is the 66-foot right away the typical one?
Oh no, it's really narrow. It's only 10 foot, and so you can't hardly even get. Sorry, as far as anybody doing any building back there, it'd be, and it's through a wooded property,
mm-hmm.
and so there's always a tree that wants to come down, or whatever. And so it's so then my question is, if would I be responsible, being the property owner, to have to take care of those trees, or would they be responsible for the easement through there?
Yeah, so they would be responsible for the easement, but you know what I mean. They can chop down the chop down the trees that are there. You know what I mean, to avoid. See,
yeah.
When somebody has an easement, they have the right to use the easement. So let's say that this thing goes through a wooded area, goes through hills and dales. You know what I mean? Well, they're able then with this easement to grade that. You know what I mean? To put it in so that let's see, to put it to. I'm trying to pull up the seller's disclosure form as I'm talking to you. Kind of like walking and chewing gum at the same time. But the let's see, because my recollection is that you have to disclose easements. You can't just let's see here. About rifle ranges and all the rest of this stuff. Features of the property in common with adjoining landowners, such as walls, fences, roads, driveways, or other features where use responsible may have an effect on the property. Any encroachments, easements, zoning violations, non-conforming uses. Okay, so that's number 2 on the other items on the seller's disclosure statement. So my first question would be, do you have a copy of the seller's disclosure statement, and did they disclose? Because they not only have to check the box saying, yeah, there's an easement, they also have to describe what the easement is. So I mean that'd be the starting point, right?
Yeah, this is my first time of buying property, so I went and when we did the signing of the closing, I had I'd say dozens of it seemed like an endless flow of stack of papers I had to sign or initial. Right. And the person at the realty company was going through everything, but I don't recollect that I was given that information.
Well, you're supposed to get this. You're supposed to get this before you sign the agreement.
Before the signing.
Yeah.
Okay, and I wasn't presented that. And the person that owned the property before me, and she had owned it for a period of time, approximately 12 years, and she wasn't aware of it. And because I guess it never came up. And when I bought the property, there's this nice little trail that goes through the wood, and I just figured it was to the end of my property that somebody had put in there. Well, I discovered that this hadn't been used for years and years because there's brush growing up in it and stuff. And then I talking to the realty company that has it listed. They said that it was surveyed in place since back in the 80s, which would be 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so now I'm, presented with this issue, and I'm just wondering, who would I have recourse against? Would it be the title company?
Probably your seller. See, the problem with the seller's disclosure statement, the sellers, the fact that they didn't know doesn't relieve them of the obligation to tell you, okay? So when they're selling to you, and they typically on the warranty deed that's done, there's a reservation for easements and what they call restrictions of record, meaning that if you went back and you looked at it, you'd find it. You'd find the easement, which apparently somebody did find the easement, and they brought it to your attention now, right? So that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the issue that you've got.
Yeah.
And the seller's disclosure statement, it says right on it that it's not part of the contract. So you can't really hold people to account. That's the idea anyway, that you can't hold them to account for what they say on the seller's disclosure statement. Well, you kind of can. But anyway, you'd want to look at the seller's disclosure statement to make sure, to find out, did they disclose it? If they did, that's kind of on you at that point. And then, and then you want to make sure that it was part of the title. It should be on that. And I know you didn't read it, but it should be on the title commitment. It should reflect that there was an easement 10 feet wide on the north border or whatever, wherever it is. But easements are serious business. The courts do not like to invalidate easements because that would leave the parcel landlocked. Okay, I presume the other parcel landlocked. And they don't like that, having unused property. So if there's some way they can find to validate the easement, then you get into a damages question. How much does the seller, the person you bought from, how much did they owe you because they sold you a piece of property with an undisclosed easement on it? Okay, and then they sue the title company, and then we're off to the races. But it should be on the seller's disclosure statement.
Yeah. So, and all of that is remote to me right at the moment. It's at a different location, so I haven't really been able to research all that, and I'll have to obtain that and look it all over. I guess now would be a reason to do that.
Yeah. So here's what I would offer. I mean, this is something we do for our clients anyway, and one of the things we beg them to do is, if you're going to buy or sell property or anything like that, at the very least, and we don't charge for it, so we do get quite a bit of the free review sort of stuff. What we say is, look, just shoot us the documents, and we can make sure that you're buying what you think you're buying. And that's part of the review that we do, because you're a babe in the woods when it comes to this stuff, and everybody just assumes everything's going to go well. Sometimes it does, but sometimes we get this situation. Okay? That music means I need to get out there, Steve, John. So if you want to hang on, if you have any more questions, that's great. Just hang on through the break, and we'll get right back to you. Fair enough?
No, I think you answered my question, and I look forward to hearing you on the radio in the future.
Thank you. Thanks much.
Thank you.
Take care. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show, the show where the bumper music is almost always better than the show itself. Thank you, Louis Armstrong. Hard to admit, easy to observe. Give us a call, why don't you? 616-774-2424. We'll get your question, comment, or concern on the air. You know, the problem with easements, and this is what John buys a property, not aware of the easements, a 10-foot easement, accessing ingress-egress easement, right? Access to the back lot. And so often, the experience he describes is exactly right. You know, they shoved a whole pile of papers at me, and, you know, they said, yeah, it's okay, this is what everybody signs. So I just started signing, and I kept on signing until we were done. Yeah. I mean, I understand that is how it goes. And, you know, that's how it goes also with an awful lot of the estate planning that we do, right? So you've got trusts and powers of attorney and certificates and, you know, and by the end of it, even though the signing takes quite a bit of time and we've explained it all and on, you know, people are like, holy cow, what did I just do? Yeah, that does happen. And which is exactly why it's always a free, with us anyway, it's always a free phone call, it's always a free visit, right? And you have literally months of follow-up. You know, once you signed your documents, we're not done with you. We've got another 2 to 6 months to make sure that your plan actually works, of implementation. If you skip the implementation, the darn thing isn't going to work. It's just simple as that. But when you do the implementation and you have that ongoing contact, now we're not trying to make you trust lawyers. We're not trying to do that at all. But at the same time, that follow-on, I find, is extremely important so that people really do have much more of an appreciation for what it is you've done. You know, this is not one of those, with the estate planning, it's just so obvious with the estate planning where, you know, where folks sign a bunch of stuff and they say, well, yeah, you know, I went to the lawyer and I paid a bunch of money and so this must be good. Well, okay. I mean, that's a way to do it. I don't think it's a very good way to do it. And as we go forward, and this is one of the things I was mentioning to John, with us, it's always a free phone call. It's always a free visit. We do charge if we do new paper, like if we're doing new legal documents, we do charge for that, and we'll quote you the fee in advance so you know exactly what's going on, how much it's going to cost, and all that. I mean, yeah, we do all that. But the point is that, like in a case like this one, it's not unusual for our folks to be buying and selling their home or buying a new property or something like that. This is exactly the sort of thing that we would point out. It's like, hey, not only do we do the math again on the closing statement, which is frequently wrong, incidentally, but you know, we also want to make sure that you understand exactly what you're doing, so that you don't wind up buying a pig in a poke. You know, and you know he says it's a 2-acre long, narrow 2-acre parcel. Well, and it's a 10-foot easement, right? Well, which was not untypical back in the day. Well, nowadays it's a 66-foot easement, right? If you want a private road or anything like that. So what if there was a 66-foot easement? It's bad enough taking a 10-foot chunk out. And here's the other thing, you know, that you get into with these easements. It's, you don't only get the easement, but you also get whatever is necessary for you to enjoy the easement. What does that mean? Well, what it means is that if the trees are going to fall over, right? And I gotta, you know, the mighty oak is 20 feet away from the easement, but the branches overhang the easement. Do I have a right to chop down the mighty oak? Sometimes. Do I have a right to trim the branches? Definitely. You know, what else can I do with my 10-foot easement, you know, that's not limited to 10 feet? Well, all kinds of stuff, actually. Okay? So you need to, when you're doing this stuff, you know, you really need to have somebody take a look at that who knows what they're looking at, and I would suggest, and does not have a stake in the deal going through. You know, your real estate agent, they want the deal done. That's when they get paid. Same way with everybody else. Everybody gets paid when the closing happens. Well, yeah, we want the closing to happen also, okay? But especially when we're doing these things and we're not charging for them. We're not, what do we care? And we're not getting paid. So, we're just going to bring up those issues that really matter, and we're not going to do it for the fee. I think that's really important. But people don't ask. Okay. Now listen, listen or don't listen. It's up to you. My suggestion is that there's lots of things, all right, that lawyers are not good at. Okay. There are some things though that lawyers are good at. Right. I mean, the legal profession is not the be-all and end-all answer to all your problems in the world. No, it's not. It is not. It's a surprise, right? But there are some things that lawyers happen to be good at. And this is one of those things, right? Looking through legal documents, telling you what the implications are. All right? Looking at a seller's disclosure statement and saying, hey, there's an easement on this property. What do you think about that? It's just a meandering path. Okay, well, for now it's a meandering path. What if they decide to pave it? What if they decide to put in drainage? What if they have to fill in, the terrain features that make this an appealing place in order for them to get back to their property? What if? Right? Are we being gloomy and doomy about stuff? No, we're just being realistic. Because when that happens, you're going to wish you had known about it in advance. Do you see? So that's what's going on here. And once you got an easement on the record, there's a lot of implications to it. And if you weren't counting on there being that easement, then you got to look at it. That's going to have an impact, should have an impact on the sales price, right? And maybe now you go back to the person with the back lot and you redraw that easement so that they agree to, you get a private road maintenance agreement so they agree to insure it and stuff like that if they're going to use it, which there's no requirement for that, right? There isn't. So there's just a lot of things like that. Simple things that seem simple that aren't really, okay? You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. If you're feeling 1 inch tall, give us a call at 616-774-2424. That's area code 616-774-2424. No need to be depressed. Get snappy answers to your legal questions, and we'll get you we'll get you on the path to righteousness. How about that? Not that hard to do. Even if you're feeling 1 inch tall. Maybe we can help. So we talked about the employee retention tax credit. The bad news about this is everybody thinks it's too good to be true. And by everybody, I mean business owners who talk to your CPA and your CPA told you, oh, you don't qualify, without reading the law, without reading, anything. They just say that, and because that's the easy answer and it's what everybody else is saying, or an awful lot of people are saying this. And as a consequence, or they'll say, you got the PPP, you're in an essential business, you're actually making more money than you used to. All these bogus reasons that people have come up with. And it betrays sort of a lack of familiarity with what the law is and what the purpose is. Now, one of the things, which I understand, okay, I get this. It's like, well, here, pandemic's over, even if, the chief magistrate of the United States, in his current mental state, can recognize that the pandemic is over, even though he wasn't supposed to say that, and they had to walk it back, even though, it's over, pretty much, right? I mean, they still have vaccination advertisements running on TV and radio and everywhere else, but as a practical matter, background noise at this point. Unless, of course, you have it, in which case it's 100% for you. But, look at it big picture, okay? Anyway, you say, well, this was for the pandemic, and yet, I get that it's a big chunk of money, and it is huge. $26,000 per employee is the maximum that you could claim, unless you're a startup business, right? There's a whole nother thing where you can get it actually up to 31,000 because there's another chunk of money. I think it's 31,000. Pretty sure it might be 33. Anyway, there's another chunk. No, it's 31,000. Anyway, there's another chunk of money that's available if you're a startup business. If you got going during the pandemic. But for most people, right? I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, right? But for most folks, it's 26,000 is the maximum that you're looking at. Now, you may not get the maximum. There's an interaction between PPP, the Payroll Protection Plan, and the Employee Retention Credit, all right, that you got to be aware of. You got to comply with it, yes. Doesn't mean you're disqualified, like I say, there's just so much bad information out there, quote unquote information. But it is something you should be looking at. For most people, though, most of you, the question, most of us, I should say, for most of us, when we don't have employees and all the rest, you say, yeah, well, why are you bending my ear on this thing? Well, one thing I do want to address. You're running the business, yeah, you could get the money. And you say to yourself, jeepers, why should I get the money? We're past COVID, right? And I'm still standing. And this was COVID money, and so it's not really right. Or this wasn't what they were thinking of with the COVID. Okay, well, fair enough. Okay, I understand that. I have two answers. The first is, if the government is going to give you money after taking all of your money, and that's all this is, it's a tax credit, right, against your employment taxes. If they're going to give you money, you say thank you, right? If you comply, if you're entitled to it based on what they say you're entitled to, take a big juicy bite out of that thing. It's not like, when did they ever apologize to you? Oh yeah, we understand you got it rough. We're not. You don't have to pay your taxes. When did they ever say that? Ever? That never happens. But you're entitled, to get some of your taxes back, and it's like, oh no, they know what to do with it better than I do. What? Government deserves the money more than I do. Seriously. And yet there are people who think that. I had a gentleman explain to me how. Now, he didn't feel this way because he was the business owner, but his key employees, whom he consulted for some reason, felt that it was unchristian, unchristian to take the money. What happened to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto the Lord what is the Lord? I mean, what happened to that? All right, Caesar says you can have the money. Okay. And here's the other thing. People say, well, we're past COVID, so what the heck? I don't really need it for COVID. I get it. But I don't know if you've looked around, but we're in the middle of a recession, okay? On Friday, just a few days ago, the stock market lost thousands, right? I mean, they're down percentage, like, what is it? 2.5%, something like that? Okay. And way down for the week, all right? It's 2008 again. Do you remember that? Do you remember 2008? Okay. How are you going to keep your business going? How are you going to keep making payroll? How are you going to keep employing people? How are you going to do all that? If you're a nonprofit, and this is available for nonprofits as well. If you're a nonprofit, how are you going to do it? All right. Are people donating as much as they used to? Church attendance is way down. I got to believe that offerings are way down as well. Okay. You need to be there on the great getting up day when people finally start coming back to church and the reawakening and all that. You got to be there for it. You're not going to be there for it, right, if you don't have the money to keep the building open, all right, and keep staff on and be doing all the things that you need to be doing. You're not going to be there. Money helps you be there. Here's some money that's available. And I'm talking about strict compliance. Understand? I'm not talking about anything but strict compliance. Caesar made the rules. I'm willing to play by Caesar's rules. But I'm not willing to say that, oh, I don't think I'm entitled. What? Oh, yeah, let the church close down. Let the school close down. Let our let our social services, our charitable services close down, and not do that mission because we don't have enough money. Hello, recession. Hello, inflation. Is it more difficult than ever to keep people because wages are going up all over the place? Yeah. Is it difficult to keep people because everyone's poaching your good employees, the good folks that you got, and it's hard to replace them? Yeah. Would a little bit of extra money that the government says you're entitled to help you keep your business going, your nonprofit going, your social service organization going? Would it help? I don't know. Maybe you don't operate with money. Okay. Well, then you don't need it. But for anybody who buys stuff or pays people, money is useful for doing that. Okay. And yeah, I know it's not meeting the strict COVID, the COVID's over. I get that. Okay, but the consequences of COVID are still with us. And some people, the governor, for example, doesn't believe COVID's over. We're still operating under emergency rules, right? I mean, that's how that's still in effect, this emergency thing, right? Because that's the only way he'll be able to give away the president can only give away trillions of dollars if there's still an emergency. And when he admits that there isn't one, well, everyone's got to walk that back. Got it. But if you comply and you do all the right things, all right, then the fact that this money is available to you, I mean, you look around, you look at most government spending, okay? It's crazy what they're doing. And you know who it goes to. This is an opportunity, this ERC thing is the employee retention credit. This is an opportunity for small businesses and other folks and to keep going despite the COVID, despite the recession, despite the inflation, despite everything. It's a little more water under the keel, if you will, a little more float the boat to keep you going until, the sun comes up tomorrow and then things get back to normal, if ever, right? But it's dollars, it's money. You're entitled to it or you're not. See, and if you're not, well, we'll tell you that too. This is not about, it's like the Medicaid stuff, right? When we do a long-term care case, sometimes people are not qualified for the programs. We'll tell you that. And we'll tell you how to get qualified if that's possible, which usually is possible. But, if we're just looking at a blank wall, we'll give you your options. It's all about getting a little bit of payback for the tax dollars you pay in. And how that got to be a bad thing, I will never know. How it got to be unchristian. Was it Christian to pay taxes? Yeah, I mean, even the Catholic Church came out and said, cheating on your taxes is a sin. They said that several years ago, right? Does that mean that getting a refund is sinful? I don't think so, not if you comply. And we're all about the compliance. But the fact of the matter is that there is ridiculous money being left on the table that could be used for very good things. Find out. That's all I'm saying. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's tax scouring personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. And if you call us, you will be E for extraordinary. And Pam did that. She called 616-774-2424. That's 616-774-2424. I understand our connection's kind of bad, but Pam, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us what's going on.
Well, last Sunday you recommended, or you said that trusts often, we have a trust, but you said they often fail if you don't have everything in the trust. So I was reviewing our checking accounts and found that one bank sold to another bank, so our account was transferred. Mm-hmm. We have 3 accounts at that bank. And I called, and only one of our accounts was transferred to the trust. Mm-hmm. So we went in there, and she said that now, rather than putting your checking accounts in a trust, you make the trust beneficiary. So that's what we did. But before I go to another bank and do anything, I want to make sure that is what you would recommend.
Absolutely not. That is not what we would recommend. In fact, it's one of the things that see people sometimes they say, "Oh, it's so easy to fund the trust," right? Or the financial. You see financial advisors do this a lot. And what they'll do is they'll change the beneficiary designation, which is what happened in your case, okay? Because that is fairly straightforward. That's pretty easy. Because anyway, it's easier than changing the owner to the changing the ownership to the trust. The key though is, and this is why it's ridiculous, because that's a transfer on death, okay? So that transfer does not take effect until after you've died. Okay? So great. So when you've died, now the trustee gets to write the checks. Yeah? Well, what if you're incapacitated? What if you're out of the country? What if you just want the trustee to handle your bills for you at some point? Okay? Well, you can't do it.
Well,
because
that was one question I asked her. I said, okay, before she said that, we were going to just put it in our trust like we had it in the old bank.
Right.
And I said, and can I get our daughter on to sign checks? And she said, no, not if it's in a trust.
Well, here's the thing. The one way that you get your daughter on to sign for the checks is you do a joint account, and you can't have a joint account trust in a natural person. So if your daughter is actively engaged in helping out with the paying the bills and stuff like that, then you just make her a co-trustee, and now as a co-trustee, she can do those things. Okay? Are you with me on that? Oh, Pam dropped. Well, anyway, you make her a co-trustee, and now she has authority under the trust to be writing the checks and whatnot. They are correct that you can't have joint owners with a trust, and at least most of them don't allow that. But so you just make them a co-trustee. Boom, you're done. We've got John on the line. Hello, John. Welcome to the David Carrier Show.
Hey, David, how you doing today?
Perking and working, man. Having a ball. How can I help?
Good. Well, I'll start off by saying back in the 90s, I bought a piece of property.
Yep.
And I had a condemned house on it. I fixed it up. And during the time, I had met my lovely wife, and so we got married and lived in that house for some time, but it was rather small.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had split the property and built another house. After that, I had also acquired some property from the neighbors to make the parcel larger and far more valuable.
Now, do we do all this with the appropriate building permits and what have you? You got the split approved by the township.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
Yep.
Well, it ain't necessarily so.
I know, but yeah, we hired a builder on both accounts.
Okay.
I didn't finish work in the original house, but yeah, it was all done. And what has happened to present day?
Yeah.
My mother-in-law was in failing health, and we moved her out of an area to be closer to us. So she actually lives in the original house.
All right.
And we put her in that house so we could take care of her, watch her.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is we've got two houses on the property, and we had a homestead tax on one and not on the other.
Right.
So when talking to the township,
yep.
They recommended doing, a property transfer affidavit to let her, have a homestead.
Yeah, well, the way you would do that, she doesn't own it, right? She doesn't have any interest in it at this point?
No, she doesn't own it. She got...
Okay, all right. So I only got 2 minutes.
Free in perpetuity.
Yeah, I only got a couple of minutes here, so I want to give you your answer. What I think your answer is. If you want to get the principal residence exemption on mother-in-law's, on the house that mother-in-law is living in, okay, then you have to deed some interest to mother-in-law. Now, you don't want to deed her the house, right? Because then if it goes, then you got to go through probate and all that mess. And if we get a state recovery, like most other states, then they can put a lien on it. You don't want that. So what you do is you deed her a 1%, 1% life estate. So she has a life estate and 1% of the real estate. Now the deal here is that the value of that is very small. So if she does need to go to a nursing home, we do need to do the Medicaid, it's a very small value. Plus it's her homestead, so it's exempt anyway. Plus when she dies, that interest evaporates. It's gone, okay? And you don't have to go through probate, and they can't put a lien on it, okay? And now you get the principal residence exemption for mother-in-law also. Now, when you do that, then you file the property, the PRE exempt, the principal residence exemption affidavit, and the property transfer affidavit that both show that you transferred this interest to mother-in-law, and and she has a real estate interest in it. But you have to do a deed first. Deed, then the PRE affidavit, then the property transfer affidavit.
Okay. Unfortunately, I did this last year, and it was just on the item 10. It was just it said other and just transfer, so not deed. So
you have to do a deed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's already been done, so I need to somehow walk this back and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's two ways of doing it. One is to do a deed that you claim is effective back in the day. You could do that. Or you could just say, whoopsies, and here's the deed now, and let's and refile. You're safer, obviously, if you do the deed now and refile. You give up the exemption from before, but that's it. Okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to save the whole piece of property is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, well, I tell you, just give us a call. All right? 361-8400, 616. Okay, yeah. Just do that, and we'll hash it out. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney.